So let's talk about the customer lifetime value, abbreviated with CLV. So a customer's life cycle determines long-term profitability. So here we see the cash flow progression over an exemplary customer life cycle in the context of the Fairphone company. For those of you who don't know the Fairphone company basically sold Fairphones, so cell phones which were produced very sustainably and had a very sustainable life cycle in production, in use, and in disposal. So we see here two aspects in the graph. First of all, we see the cash flows at the y-axis, and we see t, so time, at the x-axis. And we see that a customer at Fairphone or at the Fairphone company has several phases. So first of all, we see that at the beginning, the Fairphone company probably has high advertising costs for the Fairphones, so acquisition costs in order to get customers to buy a Fairphone. So if this is successful, customers purchase their first Fairphone, so there's a peak in the cash flow. After some time, it is possible that the display of the Fairphone breaks. So again, the customers have to purchase a new display in order to keep their Fairphone going. So there is another peak in the cash flow area. Then the camera might be aging, so the customers might wish to renew the camera of their phone, so they will purchase a new camera. And again, we have a small peak in the cash flow. After some time, customers may stick to this particular label, so to Fairphones, as a lot of customers stick to different labels, such as iPhones, for example. So we have a kind of customer loyalty, and customers stick to this particular label and purchase their second, third, or fourth Fairphone. So we have, again, peaks in the cash flow area. So we see here that early customer acquisition can pay off in the long term, as a customer who stays with a certain company has peaks in the cash flow phase, so they keep buying, of course, further phones or products or additional products, improving their current product. So that's the basic idea of the CLV. And now let's have a look at the formula. So this is the basic model. It's called basic model because a lot of extensions exist, but here we will focus on the basic version. The CLV is determined from the present value of all cash flows with a customer over the duration of the customer relationship, so the time the customer stays with a certain company. So similar to the slide I've just presented, we have here at the left-hand side initial acquisition costs, so money spent from an organization or from a firm in order to get customers to buy something, so advertisement cost, for example. So we have these expenses at the start before the customer relationship exists, so costs from the company. Then if this acquisition phase was successful, the customer keeps buying products and services from a certain companies, but again in this following phases the company has costs, for example advertisement costs, in order to maintain the customer retention, so in order to keep the customer buying products and services and keep the customer satisfied. So when we deduct the expenses from the incomes, so the expenses for keeping customers from the income generated by the customers, we have the so-called cash flows. And these count in the CLV formula, which is presented at the right-hand side of the slide. So the formula works as follows. At the beginning, again, we have those high acquisition costs, and then we have for each period the sum of the cash flow, so the expenses minus the costs or expenses invested to keep the customers buying products and services, and we discount these values in order to have the value today, so the present value of all cash flows. And that's the formula. And since the formula is always a bit abstract, I also brought an example to discuss. So let's have a look at this case here. We have, a company, again, the Fairphone company, and the company advertises at social media. So it has social media marketing payouts, which account for 15,000 euros. So they are quite active at social media. We have a number of clicks generated on the homepage of the internet shop. So the number of clicks is 10,000. We have the number of customers registering in this way, which are 500, so 500 customers. We have order volumes per customer in 3 periods, so in the period 1, 2, and 3. And we have payouts, so expenses for each customer in the periods 1, 2, and 3, which are also given on the right-hand side. And we have given interest rate per period, which is the same for each period, so 5% for each period. And then we start our calculation. So first of all, we have to calculate the initial expenses, so the acquisition costs. We know that the Fairphone company spends 15,000 euros for social media marketing payouts, and we know that we have 500 customers who registered. So we aim at calculating the acquisition costs per customer because, and that's very important, the CLV is a value or a key figure at a single customer level. So we have to calculate for a single customer. So interesting here are the 30 euros, which are the results for the acquisition costs. And then we calculate the cash flow for each customer for each period. So for example, for the first period, we take the 400, which represent the order volumes per customer and period, so the income generated by a customer, and we deduct the 296 payouts per customer in the period, so the expenses a company has in period 1 for a single customer. And we do this for the second and third period. So we have the cash flows for the 3 periods. We discount them because we want to have the net or the present cash flow. And this yields 179 euros. So that's the CLV, so the customer lifetime value, which we calculated here.